There we go. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ezra and I work in our career and professional development team here at WGU. And I am super excited for today's session on careers in corporate accounting with our fantastic panelists here, Zachariah Adams from Parker Hannifin Corporation, Dustin Daniel from the Wolverine Power Cooperative, and Christy Pierce from the Mom Project. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us here this afternoon. Um, I am excited to dive in, so I'm just going to go right in and have you guys introduce yourselves. And Christy, I don't know if you want to go first. We'll go backwards.
Sure. Hello. Thank you so much for having me today. It truly is a pleasure to be here. My name is Christy Pierce. I'm currently Vice President of Finance and Accounting for the Mom Project. I actually started my WGU journey back in 2008 before online schooling was popular. So I worked full time and went back to school full time. I was sort of that non-traditional student that had always went to school part time because I always paid and worked ever since I graduated high school. So I finished Bachelor of Science in Accounting and then went right into getting my MBA in Strategic Management. I went back to school at the age of 30. I was more of that non-traditional student. I worked in restaurants and hospitality up till I was 30. Always loved the business side, but never really could hone in on what I wanted to do. So in going back and being a non-traditional student, which I'm sure some people have, you're kind of always like fumbling around. So I'm happy to share my journey. Currently, I have been graduated. I started as a tax accountant, and through my career, I've gone from a tax accountant all the way up to a VP across 3 different industries. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, then a financial technology company, and then the last 8 years I've been in staffing. So happy to be here, and thank you so much. Look forward to having more conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dustin, do you want to go next?
Sure can. Also very pleased to be with you this afternoon. Dustin Daniel, I'm Vice President of Accounting and Finance for Wolverine Power Cooperative. We provide transmission and generation services for approximately 300,000 meters within Michigan, selling to 6 distribution members as well as to several large universities throughout Michigan, as well as other organizations, Amway hotels, including the JW and Amway Grand through our alternative energy supplier, and to 6 municipalities in Indiana. We own several different types of generation, and just in the next couple of months, we are responsible for the first restart ever of a nuclear plant down at Palisades in Covert, Michigan. So we're very excited about that, and really hone in on the mission of keeping the lights on throughout the peninsulas of Michigan and throughout the larger electric grid.
That's very impressive. Zachariah, want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Ezra. Hey, everyone. Thanks for letting me join you here today. My name is Zachariah Adams. I'm an accounting development program manager for Parker Hannifin Corporation, which is a Fortune 500 industrial company based out of Ohio, but with a worldwide reach. It's a fancy title for saying I do a lot of recruiting, retention, talent development, succession planning type stuff for our organization. But I have an accounting background. I have a accounting degree and economics minor, and I've had a couple different roles over my 10 years with Parker on both like the manufacturing cost accounting side of things, and more recently as a financial analyst here at our global wealth headquarters. Parker is an engineering company, so we're a little bit different than, say, a public accounting firm or a financial institution. We're one of the biggest engineering companies in the world, did almost $20 billion last year. We've got 60,000 plus employees in 43 countries around the world. Just a very, very large manufacturing entity, which leads to some unique opportunities and career paths, as I'm sure we'll get into today.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's fantastic. All right. So I love a good career journey story. And so I appreciate, Christy, you've touched on that a little bit already. But wanted to hear like how you got your start in accounting, how you picked that as a major, why you kind of decided to get into that field. And if there were any key sort of opportunities or decisions that helped shape your journey.
Sorry, I think I have a delay.
No, that's okay.
Happy to. To be honest, I've always loved numbers. When I grew up, I might show a little bit, but when I was growing up, calculators became very popular in high school, and my father always refused to allow me to have one. So he made me learn math in my head and do it in my head. And so I became fascinated with numbers in high school. I just didn't know what I wanted to do with it because I didn't at that point want a desk job. So once I actually started working in restaurants and hospitality, and I elevated up to the ranks of a corporate trainer, I really got involved in the finance and accounting piece with the basic bookkeeping functions, right? AP, AR, purchase orders, those type of things. And I just love numbers. So I kept thinking, what else could I do with this? And then I learned a little bit about taxes. And I'm like, okay, so that's a different side of the numbers. I knew when I went back and started back to school that I was like, I want to finish my bachelor's, but I did not know what I wanted to do with it yet. So I actually just stepped into a staff accountant role at a Fortune 500 company because I said, I want to learn it all. So I wanted to learn GAAP, and I worked for a life insurance company. So I also got to learn statutory reporting. And in those 4 years, I learned so much about the compliance that I'm like, okay, I like the big companies, but I like having a seat at the table. I like doing multiple things, not 2 or 3 or 4 things. I like being very widespread. And so as each opportunity I took, it showed me a different path forward that I wanted to be. When I started 15 years ago, I would have never said at an accountant, my goal was to hit controller within 10 years. Once I hit controller, I hit it in 8. And once I hit controller, I'm like, I'm not done yet. I wanted to keep growing. But I think the industry that you're in and the company that you're in actually help pivot you in different directions that I was a big fan of. I have a 5-year plan. That goes out the window because it was just like, no, I want to do this and I want to do that. And more from an accounting side, I think the more you explore, it showcases other things that you want to do in more of maybe an FP&A role or a data analytics role. And accounting and finance really are 2 different degrees, but accounting is so widespread. It very much is cross collaborative and departmental with technology, with operations, depending on the industry you're in and the size. So what I had done was it really helped me identify, I like being in the small to mid-size market and helping small to mid-size companies grow. And so in that evolution, my role has continuously grown. So even though we have same titles here of Vice President of Finance and Accounting, I can guarantee our roles and our responsibilities, because of the size of the company and what we do, are probably very vastly different. So it's helped me identify what I'm really good at, what I enjoy doing, and I always take every opportunity as, is that a soul fuel or is that a soul suck? And what ignites my passion for finance and accounting.
That's fantastic. Thank you. All right. Well, since you kind of teed it up, Dustin, tell us tell us the other side. How did you get into accounting? And
Yes, I was in an undergrad for a business administration degree, was looking for a Bachelor of Science, and I had a really sharp advisor. And she said, you are not that many credits away from being able to add accounting. That guarantees you a government job anywhere for as long as you ever need something. And so I said, well, I like that amount of, assured employment. And so added that, was also working more in the retail sector throughout my college time. As soon as I got out of that, started in an accounting group for Navistar, who's now International Motors, and was working in the purchasing department there. So, billions and billions of dollars of spend, and really got to know the business of everything that was going on in the organization. A great place to start off and really grow that understanding about where is the money going, where are we making money, and how do we make certain we're maximizing profits through controlling costs in materials. So really interesting start there. Went on to work for Cummins in their distribution system, and then into Lincoln Electric System, then pivoted from heavy manufacturing into utilities, and going from FASB into GASB and learning all of the rules around that. Very interesting. And then pivoting into co-ops, which we are a nonprofit. And so we file 990s instead of other corporate tax forms, but still have a very keen interest in being profitable for our members. So really interesting to have those different directions, as Christy was saying, the different things you learn along the way about organizations and different sizes of organizations really helps you hone in more on what you want to do. Don't think that your first choice locks you into anything. There are plenty of paths and plenty of opportunities. Just start asking the questions and bring others into your group that they can help move you forward.
Love that. That's awesome. All right, Zachariah, tell us your story.
Yeah, I when I came out of high school, I wasn't really sure what path to take. So I did a little bit of kind of soul searching and research, and I had a family member who was in accounting who seemed to really enjoy it. When I came out of school, we were just a couple years out of the big recession. So job security, to Dustin's point, was a big thing that people were considering and thinking about. And so I decided to go the accounting route, and then picked up econ when I was at university, just because I found it a little bit interesting. I think a big kind of key decision or opportunity that I was given is I started interning with Parker when I was going through college, and was lucky enough to get an internship here in our FP&A department, and got to see some really neat things that really kind of inspired me a little bit. And so each summer going through school, I came back to Parker in different departments, got involved, and then went into this really neat rotation program that we have where I traveled all around the country, work with different teams, work with different of our product lines and value streams, lived in different places, saw different things. And I think for me, that was pretty influential. I was a pretty shy, reserved person, even coming out of college. And I think that opportunity really expanded my horizons and showed me all the variability that you can have with an accounting and finance, background, and gave me the tools to build that solid foundation early on that I could then use later on in my career, up till today. So I think that rotation program for me was a good fit. It's not for everyone. Not everyone's looking for that kind of opportunity, but if you are, those are great ways to kind of kick off your career.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so my next question here is, what are some of the most common misconceptions that you hear students or maybe some of your entry-level staff, have about accounting, especially in the corporate setting?
Common misconception here all the time is most people think that accountants just do taxes. They do not understand that accounting and finance, one, it's you only do taxes, or finance and accounting are the same. And I'm like, they're really not. They're two different degrees for a reason. If you're a unicorn, you can kind of like pivot off of both. The common misconception is, yeah, you do my taxes. No, actually, I did taxes in the very beginning, but I think it's because it is so vast that a lot of people don't understand the many components. And then, just like Dustin said, like a nonprofit, most of your back office structures are very complicated. They have multiple facets of it. It's not just one task that you're doing. It's a combination of 20 or 30 married together departments that create your financial statements. That is your finance and accounting, right? So at least for me, that's common that I hear.
And Zachariah, feel free, don't be shy. Feel free to jump in. We don't have to always go in order either.
Oh, I would kind of echo that. I think one of the biggest things when I go to universities or talk with folks on interviews or calls, I think similar to what Christy said, a big thing is, hey, I don't know if I want to go audit or tax. And usually my response is politely, well, it doesn't have to be either, right? When you think of almost any company in the world, right? Anything from sports brands to athletic wear to big video games, any industry, automotive manufacturers, they all have teams of accounting and finance folks, and not all of them are doing just audit or tax. And in fact, most people probably aren't doing audit or tax, I would venture to guess. And so that, I think, is a big misconception. We really try and let folks know when we go and talk to potential candidates and stuff that, hey, yeah, those are two paths and they're very important. We have an internal audit department here. We have a tax department internally, but those are just two out of the entire, two pieces out of the entire puzzle. Our bread and butter is cost accounting. It's manufacturing managerial style accounting. And so that career path will take you a whole different kind of set of things than necessarily just working on those two items. So I would agree with Christy. That's probably the biggest misconception that I see coming when I talk to folks.
I was going to say, Zachariah, you just said something very interesting, because I think it all depends then on the size of the organization, right? Because I have always worked for small to mid-sized companies. And so a lot of mine is private equity, venture backing, very complicated cap structures with tables, which you don't necessarily learn with your degrees. Those are additional skills that you learn on the job. So it's like your degrees teach you the basics of debits, credits, your financial reporting, like the caveat, but you really learn on the job because every company is different and every industry is different. Yeah.
Great points. Dustin, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I would say the interesting thing is whenever people fail to include accounting, right? They think, oh, we'll just make all of these decisions and then you get to be the last to know. I heard it said that you're in the basement, you're where all the pipes feed to from all of the restrooms, and you get all of the stuff that comes there. And it can be that way. If you are not at the table, as Christy said, if you're not one of those people in the conversation, then you can end up with a mess on your hands, and people think, oh, the no fun people are here to make us play by the rules. And it's really just to help on the front end. You can do so many things to keep yourself from having to correct things on the back end. And so being a business partner, even if you are keeping the books, really helpful to make certain that you're keeping your ears open for things that are changing and being able to support that. So thinking of as accounting as just the bean counters in the corner, just not the right place for us. And it's something that can strengthen the organization rather than slow it down.
That's a really good point.
Like Dustin, I love that. I actually started using an analogy lately of, and it was someone I used to work with. She's like, I never really understood how impactful your back office is, because your back office is your cost preservation. They are not your cost generation, but your cost preservation is much more critical than your cost generation. So yes, it's like, how do you then get your back office more to the front of the line from that cost preservation standpoint, where it was I think right now, just with the economy, a lot of owners that I know are really leveraging and leaning into CFO and VP perspective on not just strategy, but also how do you then fluctuate and adjust your costs respectively to just revenue. But then what does that strategy look like? How do we become more creative versus being just bean counters? How do we then give them a more proactive strategy to adjust the business plan 3 to 5 years down the road?
Absolutely. All right. Pivoting a little bit here to kind of going back to your first role in accounting, right? What was your first role like, and what skills mattered most in that early stage? And then does your experience differ from what you are seeing kind of the way entryway roles are structured today? I can repeat that.
I can get us started, and then maybe Dustin and Christy can chime in. My first roll off of that rotation program that I mentioned was what we call plan accountant, or a cost accountant. I actually lived up in Michigan, where some of the folks on this call are from, and lived in a little town called Kalamazoo, and was worked at our division headquarters. So all of Parker is split up into these business units that we call divisions that have multiple sites and plants and facilities spread out all over the U.S., all over the world. And so I lived in Michigan, but the two plants I was in charge of, one was in Phoenix, Arizona, and one was in Tijuana, Mexico. And so that first role was pretty unique in the sense that I was traveling a lot. I got to go every couple of weeks. I'd hop on a plane. I'd either fly to Phoenix or I'd fly to San Diego, and then cross the border, work out of those plants. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things, right? Christy said earlier, not everything you learn as part of your degree or schooling and stuff. And that was very eye-opening to me, especially when you're working, internationally with different teams and folks and ways of doing things. You really start to appreciate the on-the-job learning and stuff like that. So I think for me, that was a pretty influential role in how I took my career after that, because it gave me a good perspective and foundation on things as I was kind of going into the next step of my career. The last thing I'll say is I don't think it's a big surprise, but a lot of roles today are leaning much heavier on automation, RPA type stuff. We're seeing AI be used a lot more, and even in my relatively short time in the workforce, that has changed pretty dramatically. And I think those are going to be powerful tools as we move forward.
I would add on to that, Zachariah. My first one was working with Navistar. I was responsible for resolving payment issues. We had over 100 debit types that we would take against suppliers. And so when they would get paid, they're cutting off supply. And so I'm negotiating, hey, what are you going to cut off supply for? We want to get the parts to make our trucks, and we want to pay you so that you can make money. Let's resolve this. Here's why you were dinged. Let's figure it out, do the entries, fix the issue, correct pricing, whatever it had to be. And so being able to learn those skills really was helpful in a lot of the other jobs that I had, being able to negotiate, being able to speak on behalf of the organization really helped accelerate my growth within Navistar. And that was a key to my success in that organization and since then as well, because it comes down to those relationships and looking not just at the journal entries that you're working on, but that if it's of importance, who are you going to tell so that they can make business decisions around it? Because that's what it comes down to. There are fewer and fewer roles where you're the processor anymore, right? That used to be kind of that. You're just AP clerk, AR clerk, right? Zachariah said it's getting automated. So putting critical thinking into what you're doing, not just plugging the numbers into your template, loading them in for the GL and not thinking about it. It's, wow, that looks weird. What happened there? Really putting that thought into it helps develop your skills and your ability to contribute to the organization much more quickly.
That's a great point. I keep thinking my first official accounting role was similar to you two. It was at a Fortune 500 company in the life insurance industry. I have honestly never had any official training in any role that I've ever had. I very much have a sink or swim personality. And so I dive in and figure it out. And I ask a lot of questions. And I ask a lot of questions to know full circle. But what that large company taught me was it wasn't just myself. I had to cross department lines and work with investment accounting. I had to work with tax accounting. I had to work with treasury management. I had to work with the actuaries. And I had to understand where all the data was coming from to be able to compile it for GAAP and statutory reporting. Because when you're at larger companies, you also have SEC requirements that you have to hit. So understanding the full depth, being able to ask questions and collaborate and communicate, it's building relationships. So very much back then, you're a data processor, but you still had to ask the questions. I agree with Dustin. Right now, everything is becoming your critical thinking capacity, where before you could just do data entry. Really, with the automation of AI for AP, AR, invoicing, it really becomes now more the analysis and critical thinking and understanding all the pieces and how that's rolling up into financials that you're preparing to your controller and everything above that. So that to me is where I see the big shift from when I started a while ago to now, is the AI automation and then the critical thinking and asking those questions.
No, that's fantastic. And I think we've kind of jumped too in our conversation to our next questions. And I see the questions in the chat too. So I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna jump around a little bit here. But since we're talking about some of these, right, more, well, I know them as soft skills. So maybe I'm dating myself, but I think now they're called power or durable skills, right? We've heard the negotiation and the critical thinking. And right, I think someone in the chat said it's more extroverted than I thought, right? What other sort of, or if you wanted to expand on anything, what other of these like power, durable, soft skills would you say are definitely critical for today, for students to have today? I know you mentioned some of them already, so I apologize, but
No, I think it's a great question because I think it's always evolving and I think it depends on your role as well. So what I have had to do is I've actually gotten mentors outside of finance. I have actually have mentors that are CEOs and COOs that help me on the softer skills from a leadership standpoint, which is more strategy focused. You have to be able to listen. You got to be able to come to the table and have all the parties at the table and have hard conversations and identify where the gaps are and then collaboratively work together to solve. You have to be willing and open to listen to feedback, which I think, sometimes our brains is, I'm just going to put my head down and just crunch numbers and then spit it out, which is great. But our roles have evolved over the last 10 years to where leaders are looking at your leaders of finance and accounting saying, help me make this business successful. And so I think the listening component, especially if you're leading teams, creating a safe space, creating that trust that allows your teams to come to you with those things to problem solve is probably the biggest thing that I have learned in being a leader of large departments.
fantastic.
No doubt of and I think even that leadership and your mindset can certainly start as be a leader in whatever role you have, right? Whatever you're in charge of, I think people tend to see leadership start when you have people that report to you. But when you are the leader of the subject that you are in charge of, that really goes a long way because you're not then just providing insight on what happened, right? Hey, this transaction happened. It's the why, and more importantly, what the executives and board members want to know is where are we going from here, right? This happened. Is this something new? Is this the new norm? And being able to start thinking about building that bridge from your skills of being able to complete the tasks of an accountant to being able to lead organizations down strategic paths really starts with that mindset.
Great. And then Zachariah, I know you're guiding already, right? A lot of your interns and entry level talent. So what sort of advice do you share with them on soft skills? Power skills, sorry.
I think the biggest one for me is adaptability. The world changes fast these days. We see that at all levels. We see that on the technology side. We see that on geopolitical stuff. We see it on just business trends in general. And I think being adaptable is truly a skill that you have to work on sometimes, right? It doesn't always come naturally or easily to every single person, right? And I think those are what I've really seen set people apart. The ones who are willing to kind of take on that next challenge, even if they don't know everything, right? They're ready to take on that next role, even if maybe they don't match every single thing on the job requisition, but they can learn and grow into it, right? Or they're willing to take that move to a different state or different plan or different place, with the hope of furthering their career. So I think for me, that's a big one. We certainly see that in our intern and LDA rotation program, but I think just the business world in general, that adaptability will always serve you well if you can bear it.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side, what about technical skills? And I know I saw this question in the chat too. What kind of technical skills or systems or like what are the things that students should know now or be working on towards?
I was going to say a staple is always Excel, right? I will tell you that every company I've worked for, I have used different platforms at every company. And you have to just figure it out on the job many times. But I still tried and true. We still come back and use Excel for everything. So really understanding pivot tables, VLOOKUPs, how to incorporate macros when you have multiple data sets and multiple files, and being able to do that. And again, it comes from your particular role or the size of the company. That one, though, has stayed tried and true. I have used large ERP systems. I have some clients that use QuickBooks. We use Bill.com, Expensify, Concur. You have all these bolt-on systems as well. Industry specific is different. Staffing, there's a lot of ATS because you have applicant tracking systems, plus then you have payroll systems. So there is not one all fits all for technology systems. I will tell you, I've probably used over 30 total.
Excel, we'll never get rid of it.
No.
Get more and more complicated. I would say exactly being adaptable, what Zachariah said, and what Christy was talking about. Don't try to do it the way you've always done it. Or I worked in SAP. Now I want to make this happen in PeopleSoft or Oracle. You have to be able to adapt to what is there. And if you are fortunate enough to go through migration or an implementation, worst thing you can do is try to make the system do something that your internal processes have dictated before, right? Figure out what the strengths are of the system and adapt to be able to use the system to its fullest ability. Really, really is super helpful. But yeah, I would say that uses of ERP, as well as really finding out where the truth, where the knowledge, where the rules are kept, so that you have a solid place that you can go and ask the questions, whether that's, FASB guidance, whether you have another source of rules. Knowing where to find the information and what is applicable, super helpful in guiding your decisions towards accuracy.
That's great. Or who, right? Who keeps that knowledge? Zachariah?
I think those are great. I don't have anything significant to add. I think dashboarding tools like Power BI, Alteryx for automation type stuff is, we're seeing a lot more folks come in with learning that, as opposed to learning those things when they're here. I wouldn't say they're necessarily a make it or break it type thing. You do learn a lot on the job, but I have noticed that schools do tend to focus on certain things like that a little bit more than they ever did before. But any knowledge will benefit you, right? And I definitely echo Excel. Excel is by far what we use every day, and if you can get comfortable in that, you can do a lot.
Fantastic. All right. And then I know I saw this pop up in the chat several times as well. So, when you're reviewing resumes or looking to hire on staff, I want to touch on certifications a little bit, right? Because there's lots of different ones. I know someone in the chat, or a few someones were asking about the CPA. Do you pursue that? Do you get that? And then I know I saw someone just talk about the CMA. How can a student decide whether to pursue what to pursue, right? What certification, and what have you seen in the business, especially on the corporate setting? Like, is there a preference? Maybe it's not talked about, but do you see people leaning one way or another towards these certifications or degrees too, right? I know some of you have your MBAs too. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can speak first if that's okay, gentlemen. I was thinking about it. So when I was in the same conundrum, I was like, do I want to go after my CPA? Do I want to go after my MBA? And I'm like, well, wait a second. Do I want a life in public accounting or not? Because that is a life that's a decision, right? So for me, my decision came down to, I did not want to be in public accounting. I did not want to be just in tax or audit or assurance. So it's industry specific as well, right? So I do not have my CPA or my CMA. I specifically went after my master's to be eligible in case I wanted to change my mind, but I also got my master's in something different than accounting in case I wanted to grow into something that was more than that. And I knew that my career path, I wanted to pursue something different than that. So when I'm reviewing resumes, I have led departments. When I'm reviewing resumes, I am not so focused on the certifications for the roles, but I am at small to mid-sized companies. So think of up to 500 million. So in that, I'm looking for taken on many functions, because you can't take someone, and this is just an example, right? So it's kind of identifying your wins and what you're good at. I've struggled with taking an accountant from a Fortune 100 company who does 5 things versus having someone who comes from a mid-sized company who does 20 things in their back office. So it's that adaptability and always being curious and taking on more, but aligning that with what the role is asking for. So if you only do fixed assets, but your title's an accountant, you may not transfer that well into a $100 million company where you've got to do 30 things as an accountant if you're coming from a billion-dollar company only doing fixed assets. So that's, for me, I look at what the experience. I look at not so much the degree, because the degree to me is an accounting degree or a finance degree. I'm looking at the quantifiable skill sets that they have and the roles that they've had. And when I interview, I ask very specific questions on what did you do with AP? What did you do with month end? Because someone might say, well, with month end, I've done 5 journal entries. But that could be very different if you have to do 20 different things for month end. And a lot of times those skill sets I have discovered in interviews that they're not very transferable. So it's really identifying the skill set that a candidate has plus what the role is requiring for the company.
I do not have my CPA or CMA. I think most folks here at our company in particular, in accounting and finance, tend to pursue an MBA, like Christy mentioned, or like a MAC type of program. Education's worth every penny, and I'll always be a big advocate of that. But to Christy's point, it really depends on what role you're looking for and that sort of thing. If I was to go back to school, I think similar to what she mentioned, I would probably do something outside of accounting just to get a more holistic view of things and kind of broaden my horizons a little bit in the direction my current career path is going. So education is always worth every bit. It's just nailing down what that looks like for your specific situation.
Yeah, echo that. I don't think that any certification or degree is the automatic key to open a door to a job. You really do have to have those transferable skills to be able to bring to that opportunity, and try to ferret that out in 10, 15-minute calls to see, hey, are you looking for a job or are you looking for this job, right? Have you spent any time looking into the organization? Do you have any questions? Right? That's probably the number one thing for me. Do you have any questions about this organization? Not just hey, how much time off do I get? But really, do you care about what's going on? Do you want to join my team? That's super critical, because that shows, again, you've done your homework. You're the type of person that we can teach and that we can put you to work. And so you can have the certifications because that's the type of person that you are, but we have those as a preferred or a nice to have, never a requirement in our roles.
That's good to know. I hope that helped answer some of those questions. And then I also recognize we're at 4:40, so I do want to make sure we open it up to other questions from students, not just the ones that I had. And I know I saw, and I'm going to kind of combine these two questions here, but I think our students are definitely feeling, and other folks too, right? This job market has been much more competitive, right? And I know, Zachariah, you mentioned, right, graduating, same, right, during the Great Recession, and then it was also a really tight market. So for students who are starting out, right, getting that experience, are there any recommendations or things that you're seeing, programs or even good part-time jobs that you're like, hey, this looks really good on a resume, where we know that you are building some of those, especially transferable skill sets that you were talking about, Dustin?
One thing I've learned for myself is never just turn down the opportunity to talk with people. If a recruiter reaches out, it's a great learning opportunity. It's a way to keep yourself sharp, to be able to be ready for those interviews. It helps you learn more about other organizations you may never have thought of. I will tell everybody till the end of time, utilities I had never contemplated. But when you start looking at the opportunities in them, the benefits, there's are fantastic things around utilities. A space that used to be boring, but boy, is it getting exciting these days with the technology advances, AI, data centers, right? The grid needs. It is an exciting place to be. And so looking at any sort of way to connect with local organizations through whatever means possible, getting to know people, finding them on LinkedIn. People are very generous with their time. One of our 7 cooperative principles is commitment to community. And so oftentimes we'll get a reach out from a technical school in town that somebody wants to spend the day shadowing an accountant. We might not have a role available, but they're just curious to see what we do, how it works. And so spending time educating, I can't believe that we're the only entity that would be willing to do that for people. So don't ever apologize for asking, and just go for it, connect, and you will find the right spot for you.
That's great advice. I love that.
I was going to say, actually, I've seen some of the comments. I'm trying to catch up with them on the side. Is, you know, when I actually graduated, I struggled to find a position because I was a non-traditional student. Full transparency, I was 30 years old. I applied for internships at the Big Four because I thought I wanted to go that way. But they all said 0 to 2 years. Most entry level accountant positions said 0 to 2 years. And what I had found was most of them wanted you to have 2 years. So I started reaching out to just job boards, associations. I was trying to just network and connect with anyone who would give me the opportunity, because all I needed to do was get myself in front of someone, and I knew I could sell myself. I knew I could sell like my work history, the skill sets I had, and that's what I did. So I found a small CPA firm, and I actually started with a small CPA firm for a year to get my foot in the door, and then took that to a Fortune 500 company. So if anyone is struggling or has those same things, I would recommend maybe at that point, if you're struggling with the larger companies, maybe looking at those small to mid-size. And as Dustin said, I am a big proponent of reaching out and asking people on LinkedIn. But be intentional. You need to be intentional with people's time and be respectful of, I'm trying to find a position, or I see that you are in HR or you're in finance. I would like to learn more about this company. I would like to learn more about the availability or if there's opportunities there. You don't want to just blindly contact people and say, hey, I need a mentor, or hey, I want this, but then there's no intentionality behind it.
Absolutely. Great advice. Zachariah?
I'll put just a different spin, I guess, or take it a step further. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Dustin and Christy said. I think I'm a big advocate of internships, and what I mean by that is I think a lot of times it's so tempting, especially when you're going through the rigors of school and stuff, to go back home to those high school summer jobs and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with those jobs. They create, they create the people that we are today and things like that, and they're very influential in that aspect. But what I always try and tell everyone is try and find some sort of accounting or finance internship, some sort of business experience, something that you can put on there. It's always tough when we talk with a really great candidate who, might be a great fit culturally, but they just don't have any of the background and are applying for a role that maybe requires something a little bit more on the experience side of things. And so I always try and caution folks. I know it's so easy to go back to those summer high school jobs and things like that, but really, really, really try and get an internship or something somewhere that you can, where you can learn and grow in the field that you want to go into, type deal. I know that's not possible for everyone's situation, but where it is possible, I think that's super valuable. You don't want to wait until the very end to start looking in that field.
Absolutely. Okay, I hope that answered those two questions there. I just combined them a little bit. And that was some really great advice too. And I know my colleague Hank dropped a link in the chat about that connection piece. WGU has some really good networking tools to help you, especially reach out to our awesome WGU alumni who are out in the field. So things like WGU Ask a Grad, the WGU LinkedIn group. So definitely take advantage of a lot of the resources that we have for you, especially while you're still in school, right? I know someone did ask too about mentorship specifically, and I like, Christy, what you said about really being intentional. In terms of accounting, I know the question was more around like where and who should they look for in terms of mentors, and kind of thinking to your own experiences and your own mentors in your life, kind of where have you found them and how have you maybe grown some of that relationship? Sorry, I know that's a curveball.
I can get us started. I think there's different levels of mentorship, right? There's from my own personal experience, I really tried to seek someone who was a peer that I really trusted who I could bounce ideas off of, right, for one aspect of it. And then someone who was maybe 3 to 5 years out of the position I was in, maybe in a role that I really aspired to or I could see as my next step. And I tried to build those mentorship relationships with that individual. So they might not be the top of their field, right? They could just be middle level or even early in career, but they're at that next step that I was trying to get to. And then I think, of course, there's people who are very seasoned and very tenured and have a lot of information to pass back and give, but maybe it's not as immediate as talking to someone who's in that next level position. So I think personally there's different tiers of it. I don't think it just needs to be one, find the highest level person in the company and see if they'll be their mentor. I think it depends on kind of what stage you're at and what that next step you're looking for is. I'll share myself personally. This new role I'm in is kind of new. I've been a financial analyst for years and years on the accounting side of the organization, and now I find myself in this kind of HR hybrid type of role. And so I've been reaching out to folks saying, hey, I'm at a juncture in my career where I could go one or two ways. What are the pros and cons? And so trying to figure out what that next step looks like and talking to people who are in the thick of those roles has been really valuable for me.
That's great.
I think that's a great point. I have had many mentors over my career span, and it's for every new opportunity that I take, it requires different skill sets. So I think for me, when I was starting out, I would communicate with anyone. Like if I was starting as a staff accountant, I was trying to learn from the senior accountant. Once I got to a senior accountant, I went to the accounting manager, and it was just, hey, do you have time 30 minutes a week? I would like to just run some things with you, or situations that I've come up with, or how do you, because it teaches you also to expand your critical thinking and your assessment, and which gives you the intangibles of how do you continuously keep growing. I'm a big fan of finding an ally on the other side of the table, and it may not even be in your exact role, it could be in another department. But I think it consistently changes as you elevate in your career. As Zachariah said, I have bounced around all over the place. I am not just accounting, I am technical, I'm operational, and the longer that I've been in my specific role, I am really good at tearing down and tearing down a department. So I am currently the company I'm at. This is the 5th company where I have actually rebuilt the finance and accounting department from the ground up. So they have inefficient back offices. I come in and assess it. And then that's where your different skill sets come in. So I'm not a traditional VP of finance and accounting. I don't sit behind a desk all day and do FP&A. I very much lead a team, but I also do HR. I also do compliance. I also do accounting. So I think your mentor is not just your role. It's also people outside of your role who can teach you those other and help you enhance the other skills that the role doesn't require, that you're not even thinking of.
Struggling to come up with anything of more wisdom to add to those. Those are great. And I would say, yeah, similarly, looking for those people a few steps ahead of you, and really these same conversations. How did you get there? What did you find exciting about this? What did you not like about this? Really helping to understand their journey. But again, one person's journey is one person's journey. And being able to glean from others what might be a pitfall for you and being able to sidestep that can be valuable by building up those relationships. I've also found that as I've found industries that I've wanted to work in, there oftentimes are niche recruiters out there that handle those industries, and they might not have an opportunity right now, but even just getting to know them, getting on the list so that you're one of the people they reach out to for opportunities really can advance your career. That's how I went from never knowing that there was a Cadillac, Michigan, to 3 months later moving here and accepting a job. Just again, those opportunities of connecting with people.
Absolutely. All right. And then I think we have time just for my one last question, kind of the one we like to tie everything up with. But what is one piece of advice if they don't remember anything else from this call today, which I hope they do? What is one piece of advice you wish to leave students with today?
I can start. I think, especially for those who are kind of early in your career search or getting ready to graduate and go into, the workforce full time. I think um, curiosity and caring goes a long way, right? Staying curious, not being afraid to ask questions. It's tough sometimes. We were all in that same boat where you come out of school, you're very familiar with how things look in a book problem, and then you hit real world situations that aren't as well defined or uh, uh, aren't as simple as the assumptions made maybe in the classroom, and you have to do a lot of the things that we talked about on this call today, right? You have to be adaptable, you have to reach out to help for help, you have to find a mentor, you have to in some cases pursue other avenues to improve certain skill sets and things like that. And so I think it's a cliche thing, but not being afraid to ask questions. I've yet to find a person that faults someone for asking questions in the workplace. And I think a big one for me is just caring, right? I'm sure we've all been parts of either a group project or something in school where one person is taking the load and things like that. And I think when you work with a high performing team and stuff, um, you got to care, right? You have to care, and you hope your teammates care too. And I hope you all find that same fit, that I found at my company, that Dustin and Christy have found at theirs, where you're working with people who do care, right? Because it makes a world of difference. Dustin, Christy, anything on your side?
It was my big one is always be curious. I always be curious and say yes when there are different things offered to you to expand your skill set. That was one thing I learned early on. Hey, I have this project, I have this. I'm like, I'll take it. Even though I didn't know what I was doing, I was willing to put myself out there, because then that shows, it goes back to being intentional. How intentional do you want to be in building and growing your career? So you have to remain humble, stay curious, be intentional, and be a go-getter at times, and cross those lines to continue growing in your career, because that shows initiative to leadership, which then could lead you into different career paths.
Yeah. I would say very, very similar lines. Always be yourself. Don't try to put on that you are something you are not. That will catch up with you. It might put you in a role that you're not as thrilled about, just because you really wanted to think you wanted this role. It might not pan out for you, but always be improving your skills, continue to keep yourself current, because even if you get into a role, you get too static, layoffs happen. And all of a sudden you're finding yourself planning to find another role when you had not planned to. And just do not coast. Get the role, be inquisitive, as both of the other participants were saying, and continue to grow in your skills and your opportunities, and you will go far.
That is such fantastic advice. And oh my God, so much really, really good information shared tonight. Can we just a huge round of applause for our panelists? Thank you all so much for your time tonight. I want to say tonight, it's getting dark today, this afternoon. Really, really appreciate all of again, your time, your insights, such good pieces of advice. And I love career journeys. And I think, what I'm hearing a lot is like, you can take this, accounting seems so like, oh yeah, it's accounting, right? Money, but you can really take this career in so many different ways and shapes and forms. And so I hope that gives you some hope wherever you are at in your journey. It gives you some ideas and maybe some next action steps as well. So Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to have Hank, yes, thank you, put our survey in the chat again. Sorry, I always forget that. Please take that survey. Tell us what else you want to hear from, what other topics you want us to touch on. It really helps as our career and professional development team continues to plan these sessions and bring in the awesome speakers as we did tonight. So thank you all again so much. Thank you, Zechariah, Dustin, Christy. Thank you for your time tonight. Really appreciate you all. And you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, evening, maybe sunshine, or, you know, more snow for us here in Michigan and Ohio. So thank you.
Thank you
everyone. Have a great evening.
so much. Have a great evening.